Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Bold and Beautiful. Today, Eric Forrester is part of Team Logan. We are not talking about Brooke. Is Eric Forrester really going to do something bad to his family on the Bold and the Beautiful? Eric Forrester's feelings were hurt when Rich Forrester made him retire. But is Eric Forrester angry to hurt his whole family and the company Eric Forrester helped build? Here is what will happen week on the Bold and the Beautiful. We have some spoilers for you. You can find them below. Katie is thinking about teaming up with Ridge's dad Eric Forrester. Eric Forrester has spent a long time building his family's fashion house. Almost 40 years. His son Ridge is in charge of the family business now. He will not let Eric Forrester design for their collections anymore. Ridge probably thought he was doing the thing, but it is clear that the party he threw for Eric Forrester to retire hurt Eric Forrester's feelings. Anyone can see that Eric Forrester was really upset when Ridge had that party for him to retire. This week's Bold and the Beautiful spoilers are really something. Eric Forrester is thinking about doing something that nobody expected. He wants to work for the people who compete with Ridge. I do not know what is going on with Eric Forrester. Some people think he is not thinking clearly. There are rumors that Eric Forrester might be getting dementia. If that is true, then it would explain why Eric Forrester wants to make this change. The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers say that Eric Forrester is really considering this move, and it is shocking. Eric Forrester working for Ridge's competition would be a deal. Eric Forrester and Katie Spencer have gotten to know each other well over the years. It is not a surprise that Eric Forrester is hoping Katie Spencer does well with her fashion company. Eric Forrester is happy when Katie Spencer is successful. Helping Katie Spencer beat his own son is a different story. Katie Spencer does not seem to be asking Eric Forrester for a job at his company. Actually, Katie Spencer looks just as surprised as everyone that Eric Forrester would try to hurt his family's company, Eric Forrester's company. Bridge shocked by betrayal. Ridge and Brooke Logan have made it very clear what their stance is on Katie's new company. When they learn about Eric Forrester's betrayal, you know what is going to hit the fan. So Eric Forrester goes to Logan, asks for a design job. This really surprised Katie Spencer and all the people who watch the soap at home. Maybe Eric Forrester is not being totally honest about why he is doing this. Eric Forrester has been working in the fashion business for a long time. He is not like his son Ridge, who thinks he is always right. Eric Forrester knows that Katie Spencer's new company could be news for Forrester Creations. Eric Forrester and Katie Spencer might be working together. It does not feel right. Eric Forrester could be spying on Katie Spencer. That would be very bad for Beatty. Maybe there is a reason Eric wants to be friends with Bill Spencer and Katie. He does not want to fight them like Brooke does. The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers for week say Katie Spencer is not sure about something, but she really wants Eric Forrester to agree with her. Katie is making a decision quickly, and it might cause her problems later on. Eric Forrester is important to Katie. She wants him on her side. People are having a time thinking that Eric will really hurt his son Rich Forrester. Some people on media think that Eric is just talking to Katie to get some information about the new companies that are competing with Forrester Creations. Eric Forrester might switch sides. Ridge's dad is very upset that his family made him retire. At first he might want to get back at his son and Brooke Logan. As things move forward, Eric Forrester could start to feel bad about what he is doing and change his mind about hurting Ridge Forrester and his family. Plus, he's in the perfect position to do some spying and espionage at Katie and Dollar Bill's new company. Do you think Katie Spencer is making a big mistake joining forces with Ridge's father? Is her partnership with Eric Forrester going to hurt more than it helps? The room went deathly quiet after Eric's shocking protestation. Every eye in the Forrester living room locked onto him as though he'd just dropped a lemon that no bone could diffuse. Ridge's jaw tensed, Brooke's lips parted in unbelief, and Katie's hands quivered at her sides. Indeed, RJ, generally the calm ground between generations, looked as though the ground had dissolved beneath his bases. Two conditions, Ridge eventually said, his voice low and edged with unbelief. You walk out on your own family, you cheapen Forrester Creations, and now you suppose you get to mandate terms. Eric didn't blench. He stood altitudinous, leaning slightly on his club, eyes burning with the same fire that had erected an conglomerate decades ago. I do'n't suppose I get to, Ridge. I am. Katie swallowed. Eric, I no way wanted this to come a war. I asked you to join my company because I believed in your vision. I still do. But if you're doing this out of wrathfulness. This isn't wrathfulness, Eric intruded gently, turning toward her. This is clarity. I've given my life to this family, to this house, to Forrester Creations. And what did I learn? That fidelity is tentative. That heritage can be discarded the moment it becomes inconvenient. Brooke stepped forward, eyes shining. That's not fair. You know we love you. Rich loves you. We were trying to cover you. By pushing me away. Eric shot back. By deciding I was done without indeed asking me? No. You were guarding your control. RJ eventually spoke. Granddad, please. Everyone's hurting. But walking down from us, working for Katie, this isn't the answer. Eric looked at RJ with unmistakable affection. You're the reason I'm giving these conditions, RJ. Because you still believe in what this family is supposed to be. Rich folded his arms. Also say them. Let's hear these so-called conditions. Eric drew in a deep breath. Condition 1, he said sluggishly, is that Ridge intimately acknowledges that pushing me into withdrawal was a mistake. Not in this room. Not in private. I want it said at Forrester. In front of the board. In front of every developer, every adjunct, every intern who watched me get sidelined. Brooke heaved. Eric. You do'n't get to abolish me and also pretend it no way happened, Eric continued. I erected that house. I earned the verity. Rich's face crimsoned. You want me to cheapen myself in front of my own company? Eric's aspect was unwavering. You lowered me in front of it first. A thick silence followed. Rich looked down, floundering. Everyone in the room knew what this meant. Rich Forrester, the golden son, admitting fault in public? It went against everything he was. And condition 2, Katie asked still. Eric turned to her again, his tone softening however. Katie, it'll only be because you choose your independence over being dragged into this family's chaos. If I leave your company, I want you to promise me that no matter what Ridge or Brooke say, no matter what pressure comes, you won't let Forrester Creations absorb you. Your company must remain yours. Brooke blinked. You're asking Katie to shut us out. I'm asking her to cover herself, Eric replied. Because this family consumes everything it touches, including the people it claims to love. Katie's casket tensed. Eric, that's a huge ask. Ridge and I partake a son. Our lives are intertwined. And that's exactly why you need this boundary, Eric said however. And if Ridge accepts responsibility for what he's done, I'll step down. If you agree to keep your company independent, I'll return home. Not as a ghost. Not as a relic. But as Eric Forrester. Ridge exhaled sprucely. You're holding us hostage. No, Eric said. I'm asking for quality. RJ looked between them, eyes contending. Dad, perhaps you should just. Rich snapped, stay out of it, RJ. Eric raised a hand. No. Let him speak. He's the future. And unlike you, Ridge, he listens. RJ swallowed. Dad, you did push him out. I saw it. Everyone did. You allowed. You were guarding him. But you didn't let him choose. If saying that out loud brings him home, isn't it worth it? Rich's shoulders sagged. Just slightly. Brooke moved closer to him, brooding. Rich, this isn't about pride. It's about your father. But Rich's mind raced however. The board would question his leadership. If he admitted fault intimately, the staff would brood. Challengers would smell blood. Forrester Creations wasn't just a company, it was a battleground. And also there was Katie. Still, it meant drawing a hard line between herself and the Forresters. If she agreed to Eric's alternate condition. No participated gambles. No coupling of ideas. No safety net. Just her alone. Katie spoke through an earthquake. Eric, if I promise that if I keep my company independent, are you saying you'll leave? Indeed, if I do and want you to. Eric smiled sorely. I'll leave because I want you to succeed without being swallowed by us. You gave me a place when my own family took it down. But I won't be the reason you lose yourself. Gashes welled in Katie's eyes. I didn't know that working with you would bring so much. It doesn't have to, Eric replied. Not if they meet me half. All eyes turned back to Ridge. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Ridge's voice came out rough. You want me to stand in front of everyone and say I was wrong? That I failed you? Yes. And you want Katie to make a wall between herself and this family? I want her to be free. Brooke rumored, Ridge, please. Ridge closed his eyes. Images flashed through his mind, his nonage in this house, watching Eric sketch late into the night, learning what it meant to be a Forrester. He flashed back the pride in his father's eyes when he first led a show. He flashed back the day he decided Eric was too fragile, too old, too at threat. He opened his eyes. I allowed. I was saving you, Ridge said still. Eric jounced. I know. But I didn't ask what you wanted. Eric's aspect softened. Ridge swallowed. I was wrong. The words hung in the air like thunder. Brooke covered her mouth. RJ exhaled shakily. Katie goggled, stunned. Eric didn't bewail. He didn't smile. He simply jounced formally, as though a crack had eventually been conceded. You'll say it intimately? Eric asked. Ridge dithered also jounced. Yes. Eric turned to Katie. And you? Katie's heart pounded, however. She'd be stepping into a future where she stood fully on her own, if she agreed. No Forrester marquee. No family safety net. But perhaps that was exactly what she demanded. She lifted her chin. My company will remain mine. No matter what anyone says. I promise. Eric closed his eyes, overwhelmed. Also, I'll come home. But just as relief began to spread through the room, Brooke's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and set. Ridge, she rumored. What's it? He asked. Brooke looked up, pale. It's the board. They've called an exigency meeting. Words formally spreading that Eric is working with Katie. They're talking about a vote. About your leadership. Ridge's blood ran cold. Eric's return might formally be too late. And nearly across city, a rival fashion house was watching Forrester Creations crack ready to strike. The war had only just begun. Eric Forrester stood alone in the glass-walled office at Katie's fashion house long after the staff had gone home, the megacity lights of Los Angeles spangling like an ocean of secrets beneath him, and in that quiet moment, the verity settled in. He was no longer simply a legend visiting a incipiency for nostalgia's sake. He was a man on a charge, and that charge had nothing to do with Brooke Logan. Rather, it centered on Katie and her growing conglomerate, Beatty, the company. Everyone in the assiduity was suddenly bruiting about, and as Eric's fritters brushed over fabric tapes and sketches projected to the board, his eyes lusted with commodity dangerously close to strategy, because he wasn't then just to help, he was then to observe, to measure, to understand whether this Logan adventure could one day rival Forrester Creations itself, and more importantly, whether Ridge had undervalued the power of the Logan women formally again. The irony wasn't lost on him, not after decades of watching Brooke and Ridge tear each other piecemeal in the name of passion and pride. And now then was Katie, still erecting commodity real, commodity ultramodern, commodity that spoke to the future while Forrester Creations cleaved to heritage and pride. And Eric felt the shift in the wind before anyone differently did, the way a true visionary always does. So when Ridge stormed into Katie's office before that day, criminating Eric of defecting, Eric didn't deny it. He simply smiled and said, I'm investing in hereafter, which transferred Ridge into a curl of dubitation. That only strengthened when he realized Eric had access to Beatty's internal protrusions, supplier lists, and forthcoming launch strategies. What Ridge didn't know, what No Bone knew, was that Eric wasn't feeding this information back to Forrester Creations, at least not yet, because he wasn't sure which side merited his fidelity presently, and that query was the most dangerous armament of all. Especially when Steffi began to smell commodity was out and still assigned Carter with chancing out exactly what Eric was doing behind those satiny new walls, leading Carter into a moral maze where every answer raised further questions, because Eric wasn't acting like an asset, he was acting like a mate, mentoring Katie, encouraging her bold designs, praising her leadership, and indeed suggesting sustainable manufacturing channels that Forrester had dismissed as too parlous, and Katie, for her part, felt seen in a way she no way had ahead, not as Brooke's family, not as Bill's ex-wife, but as a hustler in her own right, which only made Ridge's paranoia worse, Because every time he saw Katie beam at Eric, every time he watched him defend her ideas in assiduity meetings, he felt history repeating itself, another Logan pulling a Forrester legend into her route, except this time, it wasn't love, it was revolution. Meanwhile, Brooke set up herself caught in an emotional crossfire, unfit to understand why Eric, her longtime supporter, sounded distant, fugitive, and unintentional to assure her, and when she eventually brazened him, demanding to know why he was choosing Katie over family, Eric stunned her with a quiet concession. This isn't about you, Brooke. This is about what the Logans can come without demanding the Forresters to validate them. A statement that rocked Brooke to her core and forced her to defy her intimidating possibility that her family might eventually outdo the heritage she'd spent her life entangled with. As whispers of a Beatty runway debut spread across fashion circles, investors began circling like harpies, and Eric realized his presence was both a blessing and a lightning rod, because the more he supported Katie, the further Forrester Creations looked outdated, divided, and reactive, and in a private moment with Donna, Eric admitted he stressed he might be dismembering his own dynasty, but Donna, ever the Logan, simply said, "Perhaps you're erecting a better one." And those words dallied as Eric made a cataclysmal decision to help Katie secure a cooperation with an transnational distributor Forrester had been courting for times, not out of vengeance, but out of belief that fashion demanded new blood, new values, and new voices, and that maybe his final chapter wasn't about conserving the history, but steering in the future, indeed if that unborn dragged the Logan name. When Ridge ultimately uncovered the verity, the battle was stormy, father and son colliding over fidelity, heritage, and treason, Ridge criminating Eric of spying, Eric fighting that Ridge had come dazed by control, and in that moment, it came clear this wasn't just about a company, it was about generations, about whether the Forrester conglomerate would evolve or collapse under its own pride. And as Katie prepared to step onto the stage at her first major show, ignorant that her success might spark a commercial war, Eric stood in the murk, watching, not as an asset, but as a kingmaker, completely apprehensive that once the curtain rose, there would be no turning back. Because the bold and the beautiful was no longer just a story of love triangles, it was a battle for the future, and Eric Forrester had chosen a side that would change everything. As the night of Beatty's debut eventually arrived, the air inside the converted storehouse buzzed with expectation, cameras flashing, influencers grunting, buyers leaning forward in their seats, and nearly near the reverse, Eric Forrester stood with his hands clasped, watching Katie pace behind the curtain with equal corridor terror and determination in her eyes, and in that moment he saw not Brooke's family, not Bill's partner, but a developer on the point of rewriting her fortune. And it stirred commodity deep within him, commodity he hadn't felt since the foremost days of Forrester Creations, when fashion was raw, parlous, and fueled by belief rather than boardroom politics. When the first model stepped onto the runway wearing a piece Katie had sketched in a moment of mistrustfulness months ago, the room fell silent, also erupted, and with every look that followed, it came sorrowfully clear that Beatty wasn't just promising. It was groundbreaking, blending fineness with ultramodern fortitude in a way that felt unmistakably now. And as applause thundered, Eric noticed the shift in the crowd, the way buyers rumored urgently into phones, the way cameras dallied, and he knew Ridge would feel this earthquake across the megacity like an earthquake. Sure enough, across city, Ridge goggled at a live stream in unbelief, watching the assiduity crown Katie in real time, realizing too late that his father hadn't been exaggerating. This wasn't a side design. It was a contender, and rage warred with fear in his casket because for the first time in his life, Forrester Creations wasn't the ineluctable future of fashion. Back at the show, Katie locked eyes with Eric through the curtain after the final walk, gratefulness and admiration colliding in her smile, and he gave her a subtle nod, the kind that said, "You earned this, no bone." Handed it to you, and that moment sealed their alliance more forcefully than any contract ever could, because what bound them now was vision. When Brooke arrived late, breathless and overwhelmed by what she'd just witnessed, she set up herself clapping alongside natives, pride swelling indeed as query eroded at her, because she could feel it too. The center of graveness in their world was shifting, and when she eventually reached Eric, searching his face for consolation, she set up not guilt, but peace, and he said vocally, "This is what freedom looks like, Brooke," a line that echoed through her like both a pledge and a warning. By the end of the night, Beatty had secured multiple high-profile deals, One of them from the very distributor Forrester had chased for times, and as champagne flowed and congratulations poured in, Eric slipped down, knowing the storm he'd burned was only beginning, because Ridge would not accept this still. Steffi would not stand by, and Forrester Creations would soon move from dubitation to retribution, setting the stage for a commercial war unlike anything Los Angeles fashion had ever seen, one where love, fidelity, and heritage would be contributory damage, and as Eric stepped into the cool night air, he didn't feel like a snake. He felt like a man who had eventually chosen elaboration over nostalgia, completely apprehensive that in the world of the bold and the beautiful, the most dangerous revolutions aren't driven by love, but by belief, and tonight, belief had a new name. Beatty.